Werner Pieper.
Hello.
If you go to Germany, one of the people to see is Werner Pieper. That means if you are one of those who are into the alternative world, wants to know what's happening, because Werner Pieper is one of the people in the world that is always ahead of the crowd, always ahead of the movement. When nobody knew in the world about green things, he started a publishing house called Groene Kraft, which was back in the 70s.
That was exactly 25 years ago. We're celebrating.
Celebrating. Now the greens thing is big all over the world. Yes.
Yes.
But 25 years ago it was new.
Well, 25 years ago it was green hashish from Morocco that made us some money, and we didn't know what to do with the money. And we sold the hashish, and people didn't know what to do with the hashish. So I got the money, and I knew people need information. So I put out these magazines, underground magazines called Der Grüne Zweig. And we even did write about
the green twig.
The green twig or
Yes.
branch.
Yeah.
And we actually, even in the first issue, we had something about Umweltschutz, ecology. We just didn't know the name because it wasn't, nobody knew how to call this. So we called it der Anti-Umweltverschmutzungsartikel. That was in 71. And actually it was called Die Grüne Hilfe first, because in that time I was a psychedelics dealer in Heidelberg, and there was the first big police bust, and we thought we should do something about it.
Tell me something about those years, because you're talking 70s. Leary and the generation, the Summer of Love was 68, something like that.
Somewhere
in America that came up. It was made illegal, but Europe didn't know about it. Did we?
We knew something because, in 68 I was still working as a chef in a hotel. I was a cook. In 69 I started dealing, and we knew about a lot of things because we had so many American GIs there in Heidelberg, at the headquarters of the 7th American Army. So there were...
Are you implying that while we know that during the Vietnam War lots of drugs were used, that the GIs already, like in the 60s, were using drugs?
They loved being not in Vietnam. They were out to boogie, to party, and they needed something to smoke or something to drop, and we provided it. They gave us information about the States, because in those times GIs weren't just GIs, they were just the regular John or Bob from your neighbor. I mean, they got drafted. So you had all kinds of young American people over here who were lucky not to be in Vietnam. So that gave us a pretty good head start into things.
So you started dealing
LSD and hashish.
Where did your LSD come from? Was that the Sandoz stuff in those days?
Thing is, I never asked. I still don't. I trust somebody or I don't. I don't want names, I don't want labels, I just want good stuff, and I don't care where it's coming from. Funny thing is that in Heidelberg, LSD was manufactured in that time, but it wasn't sold in Heidelberg. So I served as a guinea pig for the good LSD from Heidelberg. If they had a new test run, I could try. But I had to sell stuff from someplace else.
Very funny. Just to put you in perspective, in the 70s you were a small hash dealer. You began opening up to the world, not only the green movement, ecology, but things like football, juggling, and over the years you started a publishing house, published many, many books. Now it's called Werner Pieper's Medienexperimenten. So you now are a publisher, but in the meantime you also became good friends with all the people from, not the drug scene, but from the hallucinant, from the psychedelic.
Well, we
world.
did these underground magazines, and if somebody remembers underground magazines in the 70s, which were mostly reprints from American stuff.
You were ripping off their text.
Some called it rip-off, some called it we used it.
Creative reuse of material.
I just read these magazines from America, and I found this all exciting. I thought, well, Germans should know about this. So I translated and published it. I put money into it. I mean, I didn't make money with it. I put my dealing money into it. And I didn't feel like writing letters to some agencies in the States asking for permission. I just thought information is much more important, so it has to be
But
used.
eventually it led to you becoming more
Well,
of a regular publishing,
it
actually
led
paying
to
people these
it
people?
led to me ripping off dozens of people in the States and England, and when I stopped dealing after 7 years, and then after another few years I even started making money on the publishing, and when I did, I wrote letters or I visited a lot of people in the States and in England. I knocked at their door and said, "Hey, I ripped you off. What do you think about it?" And they all loved it because they knew that I didn't make it for money, that I just thought that their message is so important, it should be spread. So when Tim Leary came to Germany the first time, I was standing at the airport. I said, "I know that you know somebody's ripping you off in Germany." Actually, there are two guys. I'm one of them. So we became really good friends because, like in Tim's case, it was all of his books were out of print in the late 70s and early 80s in America. All his books were always in print in German. Not in a legal edition, but they were available to the people. And he loved it.
So you met all these people, and now you are the, well, I wouldn't say you are the network agent for the psychedelic world in Europe, and if some festival happens, you're always there, and you know Albert Hoffman and this guy, whoever comes from the States comes to your place. So we're actually now in a little town near Heidelberg, Weinberg. Actually, it's called Leurbach, which is a little nobody hamlet out in the woods. But you're very close to Heidelberg.
Yeah.
And that means
And Frankfurt Airport is just half an hour away.
So, in fact, you are on crossroads. Although you're not on crossroads, you are on the crossroads between London and Vienna, and between Amsterdam and Italy. And many people just drop by, and you do what you do.
Yeah.
Which is disseminating information, isn't it?
Yeah, I love hearing good stories, and once in a while I love telling a good story. And I'm not good in asking questions like interviews. I always think, well, those people know so much. What is really important? I don't know. Why should I ask? They should tell me something. But sometimes there's a question coming up. I thought, well, like, nobody ever thought of, why is it always 11 people playing soccer, football? It's always 11. Why? There should be a reason. Nobody knows. So I start asking all these people who know everything about soccer. They say, "Oh, we don't know. You know, it's like God-given." So I even asked the head of the German Soccer Foundation, the World Soccer Foundation. Nobody knows.
Do you know now?
Well, I thought this is my big chance to, what I love, write history. Because if nobody knows and I just make a story up, they can always quote me, and then it's reality. I love this, you know.
So what was your explanation for all
Well,
that?
I actually made a story up, but then I got this article written by a friend of mine, actually from Amsterdam, Rufus Kamphausen,
Yeah.
who studies numbers and all this stuff, and he wrote me something about the 11, the meaning of the 11. And funnily enough, it was just exactly what I wrote up. It's the Freemasons. It's always the 11, you know. So my soccer book, Der Ball gehört uns allen.
Because that's so funny. You, in a way, you're an intellectual. On the other hand, you write about very ordinary things. One of your latest books is about tampons, yeah?
Yes.
And you always find something. A few years ago, you wrote a book about the festivals and the holy days of all these immigrants, because like yesterday.
Well, about
we had-
hospitality,
Yeah.
we're in Germany right here, and the world knows that Germans are not always the most friendly people to foreigners. So I thought, well, we never learned how to, be friendly to foreigners. So going abroad, I'm amazed that people are so nice to me. Why? So I thought, well, let's do a book about how people in different societies treat strangers. And I love doing books about subjects that I don't know too much about it. I learn while I write the book, while I do the research, and that makes it easier for people to read the books because they're not written by a specialist. They're just written by some asshole like everybody else. So, but nobody wanted to buy the book, the hospitality book. It got wonderful, dozens of wonderful reviews, but it's not selling. But that's often the case with very interesting things. I know the information spreads. I see parts of that book in all kinds of magazines coming up.
Yeah, because it contains things about, say, the holy days of the Hindus and the Moroccan people, and so one of the original goals was to sell it to the government for embassy, so that they would know what to do in different countries.
Yeah, well, I phoned the German Außenministerium and asked them, how do you brief your diplomats when they go abroad? And they said, we don't. I couldn't understand, you know. But they didn't order 100 books or something, so I still don't know how they do it.
Oh, it just stopped. This is Bill Anhang's light art.
Right.
Yeah? Just fun. You have a lot of little objects here. People bring them. Yeah, this is a crossroads place, but it's also a crossroads place for art objects. And we have Australian art here, and what is this
Well,
thing?
that's German art.
That's
and
German?
that's from Botswana in Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah, for years when I was doing the magazines, I was always the one who is here, who's in Germany. So a lot of people who travel a lot, they meet in this place and tell me all the stories about the world.
Let's go back to like 1100. In those days, Heidelberg was there, yes?
Mhm.
And there were wise guys, priests, monks, traveling around. Meister Eckhart comes to mind.
Mhm.
And they all spoke Latin.
Yep.
And they were part of the University of Rome and the University of Paris and the University of what in Germany we would have Cologne, yeah. And they would travel along these places.
Yeah.
That was an interesting time because then Europe was united in that intellectual way. All these people spoke the same language.
I have no idea about the 11th century, actually.
Yeah.
No. No, I'm very bad in history. I mean, I invited some North American Indians over in 1973, which were the first traditional American Indians ever to come to Germany outside of circus shows. So as a German, it was pretty exciting to look for kind of spiritual roots.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those American Indians tell you you have to look for your own roots.
These were
So-
Hopi Indians or what?
Hopi Indians and other clans. And so I searched for those spiritual roots for a few years. But all of a sudden, you turned into a Nazi. You know, if you look for spiritual roots in Germany, you end up being a Nazi in the media. It's very amazing.
How does that come? Because they equated the Neue Zeit, which was a little bit...
Well, it was the new, I mean, Hitler called it the New Age, das neue
The-
Zeitalter. It's nothing new for us, you know. The New Age was all, and Hitler, you know, he talked about decentralization and soft technology and all these things. But
because he came from a tradition also, he was at least briefed or whatever, he was part of all kinds of societies where he learned something about alternative.
yeah, I mean, he had a few things that I think really funny, but you can't really talk about him in Germany because, you know, just mention the name and you.
And you're off.
I just love him saying that like the tobacco is a revenge of the Indians for the alcohol they got. You know, I think this is pretty clever. But because Adolf said it, you don't have to say it today. Well, no, it's things like I thought, oh, it's a good idea to celebrate the longest day or the longest night of the year because people all over the world always did it. So we put up this summer solstice fire. So we are called Nazis because until a few years ago, it was not allowed to put up open fires on summer or winter solstice because this is Nazi stuff. That was a law put on us by the Americans.
That's funny. Because so you are one of the people, that's why I'm saying when there was a time when Europe was one, in that respect, intellectual, that people would just travel and it took them months to go from one university to another or whatever, by foot or primitive means. And you have the same function. I know so many people who say, oh, I'm going to Germany. Yes, well, on the way to Munich, I'll stop by Werner. You are on this trail, really.
Yeah, it's strategically
placed.
Wonderful, you know. It's
Yes.
just,
Whether you go to Vienna or Munich or Basel.
if you go from the north to the south or the other way, it's always nice to stop over for a night here. So I get all these stories and I publish a few and make a living out of it, which is wonderful.
Yes, because and it's wonderful for us because it's a mutual process. We know about you, you know about us. People in Amsterdam know
Yeah.
you. You have the same role as Werner, sorry, as Fraser Clark in England, and as Tim. You know, you would go to Tim and he
Yeah.
would say, "Go, oh, you go to Amsterdam, see Luke. You go
Yeah.
to Germany, see Werner." You know, it's the
Right.
the.
It's just a little family, really.
You visited most of these people, and you were good friends
Yeah.
with Leary, Albert Hofmann. Tell me a little bit about him. He was the man who
Invented.
April 14 or 16, depending on what you call bicycle day, invented or found LSD,
Yeah. And
which was a known substance, but nobody took it in the dose, and then he took it and realized, wow.
and I took it and I thought, oh wow, this is. I mean, it wasn't. The feeling wasn't actually too new to me. I grew up in a way that I knew that all kinds of parallel worlds or whatever exist, but taking LSD with other people made it easier for me to communicate with people. It wasn't really a new experience for me. I don't know why, but that's the way it was. But I'm always ever grateful to Albert, and he's 90 years old now, and he's one of the nicest people I ever met. So after taking, I don't know, I mean, I was selling LSD to GIs. They always bought like 100, which meant first you have to take some trip with the buyer to find out if it's good stuff. So I ended up taking, I don't know, 350 hits of LSD in my life. And then one day this doctor comes and says, oh, he got official permission to use LSD in scientific studies. Brain studies, hemisphere shift, right, left wing. And so I was a guinea pig. I got a shot of LSD in my arm.
Unusual way to think.
And yeah, well, then I saw Albert Hoffman and thanked him, and then I saw him more often at some conferences or whatever. And then one day I asked him, well, is there anything that you wrote and you want to have published? And he had this little Volkspredigt. He held it in the church once. And I published it as a small pamphlet, and we even sold 3,000. I thought, well, he's 90 years old. I should pay him the royalties in advance, because, you know, it's very bad if people die away and you got to have the money, you know, what you going to do with it? So he actually loved the idea that he gets royalties in advance. He said he never met a publisher who asked him for his bank account number.
You are at the same time the most eerlijkes. You got prizes for being an honest, and on the other hand, you are one of those who always saw information has to be free. Yeah.
Yeah,
the paradox
about the honest thing, I don't know. That's what people think. I wouldn't give me the prize of being the most honest publisher, really not. But money is not of any importance to me. Never. In what I do, I can say for the last 29 years, I haven't done anything for money. You can't buy me. I just want to learn things. I want to meet people. I want to do something that's interesting. And I'm very busy, fleißig in German, and I can make a wonderful living out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't own a house, I don't drive a car, but I have a wonderful family and wonderful friends, and I learn more every day.
Coming back to Albert, to me he seems like an older gentleman, but a little bit stiff. He's a bit. Yeah, he's active. You know, you wouldn't believe he was 90. You would say he was just 70 maybe, 75.
68.
Yeah, 68, and a very active man, but a bit stiff, a bit German, a bit Swiss, a bit
well, he's definitely
charming. Yes,
he's
very
definitely not Dutch. I don't even see him as stiff. I mean, I love hugging him.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't hug too many stiff Germans. So he's yeah, well, he's just fantastic. I mean, if LSD needed any advertising, it would be him. You don't find these kind of people in most places.
Well, people you know, most people in the States will associate LSD with Tim Leary. Very few people know Albert Hofmann. I mean, he goes to all this conference and you see him, and you know, the insiders know him. How come? Because he never really.
Well, he's a chemist.
He's a chemist, yeah.
Tim is a pop star. He was. He still is. He was living in Hollywood. That's something else. But Albert is just a chemist who is really open to the world and even to the spiritual world. And but mainly he's a retired chemist. And he got this wonderful wife, and he's living in a wonderful place in the mountains, and there's no reason for him to travel the world for his ego. I mean, he doesn't need it, you know. So he just goes to places where he's invited, and
what he likes, yeah.
And what he likes. And well, we had him several times coming over to Heidelberg, and the last time was in February in '96. When we organized this first international conference on the prisoners in the war on drugs. And we had up to 200 people from 14 different nations coming to that conference. And the big surprise was Albert Hofmann. He just got really into this. I mean, there was John Beresford. He brought 10 letters from American prisoners who are in jail up to 75 years because of LSD. And every one of those people wrote a wonderful letter to Albert Hofmann saying, well, we did this and this, for that and that reason, we got so many years in jail, but Albert, don't worry, we thank you, it's all right. Mm-hmm. I mean, those letters, everybody was in tears, and Albert answered every of these letters. He really takes responsibility for what he did.
Well, we saw there was an official conference. There was the official Heidelberg, what was it, the psychedelic conference?
Yeah.
With all these doctors, academics. And their main thing was maybe we should allow psychedelic research again for medical purposes.
Yeah.
But be aware, we don't want it in the streets, we don't want it in the discos. And then there was the audience out there, you know, in the audience sitting there, and they were kind of fighting it. They said, you know, how dare you? And I think Hans Cousteau made it very clear. He said, how dare you state that your medical thing is worthwhile, while our disco ritual, which we feel as a ritual, as a way of coming out in the world and you know, joy, the group feeling of kids going out taking ecstasies, could you put that in one category as bad, and your research for people in hospitals or you know, schizophrenics or whatever as good? And it was very funny, because on the stage there were the people from the established German, you know, well thinking about psychedelics, we should do some research, but not out on the street.
Yeah.
And then there was this other side. How do you see that? Because you really come from the street side, I would say.
Yeah, well, that's we put on our conference about the prisoners in the war on drugs 3 hours after the official conference stopped, because we knew everybody's in town, so we give them a chance to get involved into these things as well. Well, I never really liked the academics. I mean, I've never been to the academic world, and Heidelberg being an academic town, I see all these students, and I just wonder sometimes if that's really good for us. But the funny thing is that a lot of those academics who are into research of psychedelics, they don't find a publisher, so they end up being published by me.
Or by themselves, like people like in the States, Sasha Shulgin, the reinventor, the guy who made MDMA into something, who invented hundreds of drugs. He is self-published his book Pikal, and there's a new book coming out, Tikal. He was here, and
he was here. He was actually in here, with his wife Anne. But you know that
I brought him.
right. And but you know that they took away his license.
Yeah, I know, and it made him pay 25,000. Yeah. Well, what he told me, that the stuff that he's working on anyway is so much out there that you know, it's he starts to find new stuff from substances that are not illegal yet.
Yeah.
So he said he didn't worry about it. He's a nice guy. That was funny when the group was sitting there on the stage. They were getting into this group mind of the academics, all kind of saying, yeah, we should have research again, medical use of marijuana, stuff like that. And then when they were off stage, they're all different people. They're like Sashi is one of the nicest guys I know because he's so open to everything.
Yeah, and I don't like these changes. I mean, people can do it; it's their game, but I wouldn't. I mean, you can see me on stage or off stage, and I'm still smoking or whatever.
Yeah, but still, yesterday we were talking about football, just taking a totally different tack. And we talked about the group mind that springs up.
Well, it's not something different. It's the same. Like doing research on our roots. I had to. Well, I came to the conclusion I don't care about any of our roots. My culture started after the Second World War. I'm a victim of American re-education, and I love it. They brought us rock music and drugs without even knowing, and we took it. So I don't care for the old history anymore. I did research, but that's enough. So now, and I don't like the regular holidays like Christmas or I don't feel anything with those things. So I thought we need holidays. So why not invent our own or just take other holidays and put some meaning behind it?
Yeah, but then we go back to the pagan roots.
Well, right, and that's the same with the soccer. We don't have clans anymore, but with soccer, all of a sudden you have colors, and this is my clan. These people have something in common with me.
What's your clan in football?
Borussia Dortmund, one and only, for 29 years. Borussia Dortmund, and I'm actually working on a book of just photographs of soccer fields all over the world, not the big stadiums, but just any 3 bars on any beach or jungle or whatever. I don't want any people in it. I just want to show the place, because I think these places are really religious, ritual places. And amazingly enough, I found somebody who was going to write me a foreword for it, Felicitas Goodman. She's never interested in soccer, but she's interested in rituals all over the world.
And she's against drugs, isn't she?
Yeah, but she loves me.
Yeah. She was one of the people at Heidelberg, and she took a stand against the rest of them drug heads, so to speak, the people that have used drugs and promote drugs. And she said you can get into the same state as by doing meditation or breath.
So I asked her to write me something. She did. One of our small pamphlets, 32 pages, about trance rituals for young people. I don't care how people get into trance or how they get into ecstasy. All I know is ecstasy is missing in this society. So
not the chemical stuff, but the feeling of ecstasy, the feeling
yeah,
of being
right.
together. And,
yeah. I don't use the term ecstasy on drugs at all. I still talk of MDMA. Mm-hmm. So we need more trance. We need more ecstasy as a feeling. There's no place where you can learn it in this society. So young people have to do it all by themselves. So they have these ecstasy rays to get into this kind of feeling.
And you think that's essential to grow up?
Absolutely.
Is that because we lack rites of passage?
Yeah, that's one thing that I try to publish more about. Just to. I mean, you can see I was never initiated into being a grown-up, so I'm still looking like I looked then. I never had the chance.
But would you say that it is controversial, but that the Boy Scouts and thereby in this country the Hitler Jugend, that idea of bringing people together in some kind of a group and make them work together and whatever, in fact, is a necessary ingredient for people to grow up?
I think it's a very helpful ingredient. I don't know if it's necessary, but it's definitely very helpful. And in this society, it was always done like the Hitler used. There was some pressure.
You were forced to go, and the church
you had
would
to do, and now people can choose which rave they want to go to.
But still, they have, if they go to a place where the punk is, or where we have all different kind of rave or house parties, and you have to adapt the right shoes and the right clothes, otherwise you don't get in. And they're very.
No, that's just what capitalism made out of these raves, because there's always some vultures flying around looking for prey, and they thought, oh, the young people are there, and well, let's invent some style, something we can sell. But that's just secondary. I mean, the feeling of the people when they're dancing all night, and maybe those British outside raves that Fraser did. He explained raves to me 10 years ago, and he said the most important thing in what I do is when people dance all night outside somewhere, and then they see the sun coming up. That's the reason I do it, because people always did it. They danced all night, and then the sun came up, and that's the very important thing.
When you organize raves. Well, you don't organize raves. You organize parties for the full moon.
Yes. Well, no. Well, we meet on full moon for 25 years, just a circle of friends, and yeah. Well, because we dropped acid 25 years ago with hundreds of people in Ibiza and Formentera, and we loved it. And I thought, yeah, well,
why not go on?
because we kind of crushed the traditional social system. I mean, my old family doesn't mean too much to me and to a lot of people, but I know that everybody needs to be in some kind of social system, social net. So we took the liberty just to build our own. And it's always good to meet friends regularly. But you know how life is in capitalism. You meet somebody and say, oh yeah, I haven't seen you in 5 years or something, you know. So we mostly need a reason to meet.
An excuse.
Yeah, an excuse. So I thought, just why not on full moon? And it works.
Yes, I've said that one way to classify cultures is by looking at the excuse they find to meet. Like, in my youth, the excuse was going to church to sing or do whatever. I was Catholic, and you would go to church, and every Sunday and they would meet the girls, and there was an excuse. You would sit there and look at the other people, and I've seen that other cultures find an excuse, if it's a rave party or it's whatever we need a reason. Yeah, soccer to sit next to a guy and say, hey man, that's a great game.
Yeah.
Because we are not allowed anymore to go up to anyone in the street and say, hey, how are you doing? You look interesting guy. So we need an excuse, and all over time people have found excuses, and sometimes it went the wrong direction. But that's a constituting factor of culture, much more than the way they move, the traffic, the building patterns of houses. I thought that the excuse to meet is important.
Yeah, and I'm good in finding excuses.
Yes, and you made a place, you made a mousetrap for interesting people. Yeah.
Yep.
They come here and they leave stuff, and it becomes a mixture of
excuses.
A mixture of excuses to meet, come and leave something and say, hey, Werner, after this piece of art.
Yeah, it's like, you want to smoke?
Well, I don't smoke.
You don't smoke.
I know, because
which makes you an outsider, because I like the word conspiracy, because we're really a conspiracy, which means, if you translate it, to breathe together. So I thought every 3 people who smoke a joint together, they're a conspiracy, in the right way, right?
I'm very good at contact highs, but I don't smoke.
No, it's just, we are a conspiracy, there's no way.
That's true. And all in the world, there are thousands of people that do this. That we form the psychedelic tribe, which seems to be another trend. Tribalism. It has led to wars in Europe. People feeling very Serbian or very whatever. Yeah, again, the tribe feeling led to violence. On the other hand, the tribe feeling within the rave culture leads to a feeling of connectedness.
Yeah.
The magazine's called Tribe?
There's a magazine called Tribe from New Orleans. Yeah, it's a good tribe there. Hold together by music mostly. And
poetry and the Beat Generation and that stuff comes up. The 60s are back, and you're one of the people who lived.
Well, they've never been away.
I don't know. The generation in between in the 80s thought they had to make a career and earn money, and now we're back to.
Well, I don't think we're back to. I mean, I never left anything, so I don't feel coming back to anything. what I see is when we took LSD, all kinds of drugs, we didn't know any elder people who had the experience. Like when I was 21, I knew one guy who was 30 years old. That was the old guy.
And now we know people from 95
I
to
knew
15.
some 70 or 80-year-olds. But the ones between 30 and 60-year-olds in Germany 20 years ago were not interested in what we do, and we were not interested in what they did.
So
nowadays, so many young people come up to me and ask me for advice. I don't even know if it's good if I give them any advice, because we had to do it by ourselves.
Because that's still your function. You're a publisher and you publish books like the Hemf book, which sold many copies.
100,000.
100,000. The Hanf Handbuch.
Das Handbuch.
Yes. And now you're actually even publishing books like urine tests, because that's the latest thing in Germany, that if they catch you having marijuana, they don't put you in jail. They take away your driver's license,
Right.
and you can get it back if you test good. That means not positively, but if you test good for having not used drugs in a year.
Yeah.
They can test it on urine or blood. And now you write books how to kind of fool the
Well,
test.
I just thought this book has to be written by somebody, and so nobody did. So I thought, this is my social function. I have this information. I have to put it out, even if I never had a driver's license, and I'm not interested in driving cars at all.
Because it becomes like a punishment for people, a severe social punishment if you can drive, and so they want to know about it, how they test and what they can use or not accidentally take, I don't know, whatever other herbs that would show up as so you provide that information. That's what you basically have done. You have always made books that you think there was a need for.
I've done books I felt there's a need for. I did a lot of books that nobody else felt the need for to buy. But as a small publisher, you have to seem that the big publishers don't touch for whatever reason. So I was very surprised. You know, we had this stoned evening talking about all kinds of things, and then somebody said, "Oh, there should be a book about shit." I thought, first moment I thought it's stupid, but I thought about it, and then I did a book about shit, and I found out it's a book in the world about something where everybody is every day. You know, it's just. So I was amazed that no big publisher ever thought about it, and I didn't sell any. Nobody was interested in a book about shit until I went on TV, and then I sold 40,000 in 4 weeks. Made me rich for a few months.
Are you an earth person? Do you see yourself as an earth person?
I don't know.
I mean, talking about shit, it comes down.
I love flying helicopters. No, yeah, probably I am.
A root.
Roots.
Personal
I'm
connecting.
ein Mittelgebirgler. Like bioregionalism says that people who live like outside it's mountains up to like 500 meters, so it's not really high. But it says that people who live in this kind of area in Germany have more in common with people who live in the same kind of area like in England than we have in common with people who live right next in Frankfurt in a big city.
Yeah, the same thing as the people from the Altiplano in Peru are the same as in Tibet,
Right.
you know, because they live so high.
Right.
Well, what I felt driving down, I've driven down a number of times, and you get this to, you know, the Rhine and the wine mountains here, and I would imagine, and again, for hundreds of years in the long past in the history, people would take this route along the Rhine because it was easy, it was flat. But then at evenings or whatever, they would go up in the hills because that would be, you know, too flat and too dangerous. They would go up a little bit in the hills and to these regions here, where there were probably monasteries or places, safe places, on the hills where people would live that were more stable, providing the services. I mean, you would be crazy to sit there out there on the Rhine and make a whatever taverna, whatever they called them in those days, because it would be too dangerous. Any Räuberhauptmann would come and smash you down.
Yeah,
so there's a certain.
We had some robber clans living around here, who hid in the woods, and every 4 weeks they just went like 10 miles to where this street, the Rhine Valley street, goes.
Yeah.
and they just robbed some Swiss businessman or whatever. Yeah. I would have done in those times.
Werner Pieper, a man of no time.
Right.
Yeah?
It's the right time, yeah.
Yeah, you're always in the right time. Are you happy?
Yeah, I am. Well, yeah, happy. Happy is a good word.
You
for
feel
it.
in place. You
Yes,
feel in place,
absolutely.
guided and directed.
Yeah.
Do you see that around you? I mean, no, I don't see it. What
No,
is
well,
that?
I see it. I mean, there are many individuals or families, but it doesn't make the news. So it's not a mass movement yet.
It's not much movement. Being happy, but if I look around in even like the conference we meet usually, a few people are happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, very few people.
Yeah.
Sasha Sugin made an impression on me that he was happy. That was happy in his body and whatever. A few people are, but most people are not happy. What is this? Is this because we move too much or stuff?
Well, the first thing when like the hippie scene evolved in Heidelberg in 69, 1970, I already had worked as a hotel cook. I had learned this job for 3 years. I had got the most fantastic papers. I was never interested in what I was doing, but it gave me some strength.
Some self-confidence.
Self-confidence, because I knew in this society I can do kind of any job and be good in it. So why not do what I want to do? Whereas most other hippie colleagues in that time, they just never finished school or never finished whatever they were learning. They really dropped out without knowing what they can do, how they can survive. It was just more a feeling. We don't want, this capitalist stuff. We try something new, but they never really learned how to work. This kind of discipline. I'm a very disciplined person.
Yeah. This goes back to like the Sufi idea that you cannot be a man of God until you have been a man of the world. That you're supposed to have children and do your work in society.
Yeah.
And when you get to be 40, then you can choose to be a man of God.
Like one of the reasons I never went to India, or Nepal, or Tibet was I always thought of, when I go there, what can I bring? Is there something that